So welcome everyone. My name is Bert Scholl. I'm with the Cancer Resource Center, and you are seeing the Living Well with Cancer webinar brought to you by the Cancer Resource Center and Huga Health Services. Tonight we have Kimmy from Hospicare. She is presenting on the Peace of Mind binder. So with that in mind, Kimmy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank
you so much for being here.
I'm Kimmy. I'm one of the nurses who works for Hospicare. Hospicare is the hospice service provider for Tompkins County and for Cortland County. I've been a nurse for 20 years, and I've been at Hospicare for 6 years. I started off as one of the primary nurses there, the primary hospice nurses actually visiting people, but now I've moved into this outreach and education role, which I've really been enjoying. And so I do a lot of in-services and workshops, and they don't all have to do only with hospice, which is also, I enjoy doing that as well. I do think hospice is important, but there's a lot of other important work that we can do that doesn't have to be within the confines of hospice services. So tonight you have signed up, whether you meant to or not, to attend this Peace of Mind binder presentation. And sometimes people, this is one of our most heavily attended in services that we do. Sometimes we call it a peace of mind binder. Sometimes we call it a just in case binder. Sometimes we call it a death binder. And that actually gets the biggest audiences. And I think it's because people go, a death binder, let's go check it out. You know, it's kind of like has a strange title. And so people are curious about what that entails. But even though Death Binder gets a lot of people interested, this binder isn't just for when we die. It can be very helpful in the event of our death, but it doesn't mean that it has to be there just for when we have died. So that's why sometimes we call it the Peace of Mind binder. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's see how this goes. Oh, you have to enable screen sharing for me or make me a co-host, I think, and it should work.
Doing that right now.
Okay. Can everybody hear this volume level okay? I got thumbs up. Okay, great. All right. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about a brief introduction to Hospicare. So anytime I have a captive audience, I like to tell people about hospice services. One, because I believe in the services themselves. I think it's really important for people to learn about hospice services way before they need them, because if we wait until we qualify for hospice and maybe we're not feeling well, or maybe it's a stressful time, that's not the greatest time to learn about hospice services. So this is a brief introduction to hospice services. Then I promise we'll talk about the Peace of Mind binder. And here's my proof that I was one of the primary nurses for Hospicare. I'm not lying. That's me visiting one of the patients that I cared for and his sweet little dog there. Same hairstyle as I have tonight. Okay, so hospice services are, it's a very specialized service that has a specific philosophy of care that is for people who are in their final season of life, if we want to put it in a really flowery way. So it's meant for people who have a prognosis of 6 months of life or less, and 2 different doctors have to both agree on that prognosis for somebody to be able to qualify for hospice services. When somebody does qualify for hospice services, we have a huge holistic team of people that come together to help support that person and their loved ones while that person is on hospice services, because we want people to be as comfortable, dignified, peaceful, have the highest quality of life with however much life they have left. And we don't intervene on the amount of life that somebody has left. So what I mean by that is we don't try to keep people alive, which is very different from most aspects of the healthcare system. We go somewhere, either to a hospital or a doctor or a clinic, to try to get better. We try to figure out what's wrong so we can fix it. But Hospicare, on hospice services, we aren't necessarily trying to fix what's causing somebody's to come to the end of their life. What we're trying to do is make however many days they have as good as they can be. So we don't try to extend life, but we also don't try to hasten death. That's a really harmful misconception that a lot of people have, They think, oh, when you sign up for hospice, they just give you morphine and make you die. And that is not true. If I ever did that, I would be in jail. I would not have a nursing license right now. But it can be hard for people to differentiate between allowing death and making somebody die, especially when it's full of heartbreak and grief and stress, and it can be a tumultuous time for people, and it make it hard to differentiate between those two things. We do not make people die, and we would be out of business because we would be in jail if we ever did that. So we focus on symptom management, pain management, quality of life, and having our person who's on hospice services here make as many choices about how they want to spend the rest of their life as possible. Also, hospice services are a Medicare benefit. This is something a lot of people don't really think about, but it is, if we take all the emotion away from hospice or thinking about hospice or talking about hospice, it is a Medicare benefit. So it's an insurance product that we are all entitled to use when it's appropriate for us to use it. We have all already paid for our hospice services because Medicare, they take money out of all of your paychecks your entire working life. You don't get a choice, and that is to pay for your Medicare benefits, which include hospice services. So that's I like to point that out to people, that you're entitled to use this when and if it's appropriate. We also have a huge bereavement support system that's much, much more robust than the minimum requirements by Medicare. And this includes one-on-one grief counseling with our grief counselors. We also have support groups that people from the community are welcome to join. We have sometimes kind of interesting workshops, like sometimes they do art or sculpture. They'll make sculptures. Sometimes we have interesting movement workshops like dancing or yoga. We also have information and events for children and teens who are grieving. And we also have 2 big community memorials every year. So in the summer, we have a community memorial called Illuminations. It's typically in June. And then we have another one in the winter months. And anybody from the community who wants to attend to remember somebody that they love is welcome to attend. You don't have to have had any affiliation with Hospicare for those community memorials. Okay, so that's my brief little intro 101 on hospice services. But now let's set that aside and let's talk about this preparation binder. Okay, so that's the 4th name that we've heard it. Now it's preparation binder, peace of mind binder, just in case binder, or death binder. All of them are encompassing the same idea. So it is a place. It doesn't have to be a binder, but we do tend to call it a binder because that's the easiest for most people and what most people choose to use. But it is some sort of place that we gather important information and documents for our loved ones in case there's ever a time when we can't speak for ourselves, whether that means we're incapacitated or very ill, or if we have died. So this talks about finances, medical history, medical wishes, and other life information, which we're going to go into more detail. And me fumbling around earlier trying to figure out how to get this document sent to you all is a whole checklist for you to use at your leisure. You can print it out, and it has all these different, what we're going to talk about here. It's a checklist of the different information or documents that you might want to include in your preparation binder. Okay, so why would we want to make a binder? The typical answer, the most important answer for a lot of people, is that it is a gift for our loved ones. Because our loved ones, if there's a time when we can't speak for ourselves, it's usually typically somebody that we know and who probably cares about us, who is tasked with making decisions on our behalf. So we want to make it as clear and simple as possible for whoever that person is. So they can provide a plan for our family or our loved ones to follow to take away really stressful decisions, or as many stressful decisions as we can. It offers an opportunity for our loved ones to be present as a loved one when we are not feeling well, or when we are maybe in our final moments of life. Instead of them worrying about trying to figure out what's your password, where's this document, where's that document, I need to call this place, I need to call that place. It gives them a time to know that that information is all available to them and that they can just sit and be with you when needed. It's also this little hummingbird icon here. It's a gift to ourselves. So this binder shouldn't just feel like this big chore or task that we're trying to complete. For some people, this can be a really interesting time to kind of review their life or think about what their wishes are or their decisions. It can be a time to put really important photos or poems or writings or journal entries together in a place, knowing that someday somebody is going to see these things. So that's also something to keep in mind. Um, and the little turtle icon below our hummingbird says it provides an opportunity for us to have difficult conversations with our loved ones, because sometimes when we need to bring up conversations like, okay, in the event that I'm so sick, I can't speak for myself, or I have died, here's my wishes. Even if we've come to peace with that and we feel relatively comfortable with those thoughts and conversations, a lot of times the people that care about us, our family and our loved ones, can be very resistant to those conversations. That can be really uncomfortable for our family members to hear. And so this is an easy, I don't want to say easy, this is a tool that sometimes can be used to open up those conversations for your loved ones. And I can't tell what that says underneath there. It's blocked. Let me see if I can move this out of the way. Okay, I can't. That's all right. So, what are your wishes? And this is going to be different for every single person. And here's some prompts to think about. Maybe you've already thought about these things, but if not, here's some prompts for you. So, how do you imagine your end of life experience? How would you prefer your end of life experience goes? And that's going to be a different answer for everybody based on what they value, who they are, what their support system is. The next, the little finger that's pointing says, what medical care or life sustaining care would you want? And also, what I like to add is there any medical care that you would not want? That's a choice for you to make, and every single one of us has the right to make our own choices as far as that's concerned. But once we've made that choice, it's very important that we either have it written down or we have told somebody very clearly what our choices are in case they have to speak on our behalf. In the bottom left corner, it says, who are the family and friends who will be most impacted by your illness or death? That's going to be different for everyone. It's not always the people who are related to you who are going to be most impacted. A lot of times it is, but not always. So that's something for each of us to kind of think about. And then in the bottom right corner, that says, what do you want your legacy to be? And that's, again, going to be different for every single person. Some people have very specific things about them that they want remembered, or they have very specific projects that they would like to work on. I worked with a person who was on our hospice services. This was years ago, but she decided that she wanted to have one of those little free libraries that are just outside and people can open up and take a book and leave books. And she was working on that for a long time. She put a lot of pride into that and a lot of hard work into that. And one day I was out at a farm stand and I looked over and there was this cute little library hutch. And then I saw the plaque and it had her name on it. And that was her library that she had completed. So that was very important legacy that she felt like she wanted to leave behind. And for her, that was great. For me, that seemed like a lot of work. So maybe I might have a different opinion, but this is something for you to think about for yourself. Okay, so for the people who take this workshop who are type A personalities, are probably already starting to kind of stress out. And I don't want you to stress out about this. Again, this shouldn't feel like this overwhelming task. This should be something that we work through as time goes on. And we have some tools we're providing today, but I don't want people to feel like they need to go and finish this project by the weekend and have it turn into something that is stressful to work on. So we're going to talk about setting realistic goals for our preparation binders, finding the resources that work for you. Again, I said, one of the examples is I said, well, we keep calling it a binder because that's what most people do use is a binder, but you don't have to use a binder. Some people just throw everything into, one of those banker boxes. That's fine. Some people throw everything into a bag. That's fine. Some people who are more tech savvy than me might upload things to an electronic way to save that information. That's fine as well. And enjoy the process. Okay, so little by little, step by step, we work through this. I don't want it to feel like a big chore. So let's start talking about what are some of the things that would be important to have in your preparation binder. And again, this is the little checklist that Bert will email to you that you can use at your leisure. It's got all of these things on it for you to use. So it will include things like medical documents, medical information, financial information. It can include your government and identity information. It can include estate information like real estate, titles, deeds, internet account logins and passwords. This one is something that a lot of people don't think about, but like your email login and passwords, or if you use social media, or if you have other accounts online, which most of us do. Clergy or important phone numbers for spiritual support people or other friends or family members that your loved ones might not be super familiar with. An example of this is that I gave this presentation previously, and there was a person in the audience who said, oh my gosh, you know what? I have a really good friend who lives in Ireland. And I need to write down her contact information because my children don't know how to contact her if they need to. So that was a good trigger for her to think, oh, let me write down that contact information. And then also, if you have any preferred memorial, funeral, or burial preferences, or a preferred funeral home. Now, don't worry, this is a big slide, but we're going to talk more about each one of these.
Kimmy, I wanted to chime in for 1 sec and say that
Yes.
one of our participants found the handout you're looking for on your website and provided a link. So we've got that for everyone whenever you're ready.
Oh, excellent. Who did that? Thank you so much for figuring that out for
Wendy,
us.
thank you, Wendy.
That was Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate you doing that. Okay, so per Wendy's help, now we have the link to the checklist for everybody to use, and it has been put in the chat, you said?
I'm putting it in
You're
right
putting
now.
it in now. Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about medical information that you might want to have in your preparation binder. So, important information would be health insurance policies and numbers. So I can tell you as a nurse who was what I say boots on the ground, like I would go into people's homes and sign them onto hospice services when it's appropriate. This is one of the first things we would ask, their contact information, who they are, and then, okay, do you have Medicare, Medicaid? Do you have health insurance? You do? Okay, and what is that? What's your insurance number? So that is information that would be very helpful to have included in your binder. A list of your physicians, including their contact information. Nowadays, it's much easier to find physicians' contact information. So if you don't have it, if you have their name, that can be very helpful. And not just your primary physician, but a lot of us have specialists that we see, right? So a lot of us have our own primary physician, but we might also have a cardiologist or a neurologist. So all of the physicians and specialists that have been a part of your care, that's helpful to have their contact information. A list of your health diagnoses. So this would include what kind of things do you go to the doctor for that you or that you take medication for or that you've been treated for. So this would be things like hypertension or diabetes, like anything that you need to go to the doctor for or get medication for. Write those things down. That can be helpful. And I'm sure you know every time you go to the doctor and or the hospital, they ask you this, right? They say, okay, what's your health history? What kind of diagnoses do you have, if any? And then they always ask, do you have any allergies? Typically that means, do you have any allergies to medications? Or sometimes people have tactile allergies like to latex or tape, medical tape, or any very severe food allergies that could be threatening to your health. Next is a list of medical procedures or surgeries that you've had And it says with dates. Okay, if you tell me the year you had a surgery, that's fine enough. Don't worry too much about, oh my gosh, what month and what day did I have that surgery? If we kind of know what year you had a specific surgery, we're pretty happy with that. Okay, so don't get too worried about the narrowing down the date to the actual day of the week. A list of your family medical history, if you know it. Some of us know some of our family medical histories, a lot of us don't. So anything that you do know, that can be helpful. Your healthcare proxy form. So if you have a healthcare proxy, it's really important that whoever it is that's been assigned as your healthcare proxy, that they have a copy of that paperwork, and that you have a copy of the paperwork. We're saying put it in your preparation binder if you have one. And then also, hopefully your doctor or the hospital would have a copy of your paperwork as well. This is another one of those things that I can tell you from my boots on the ground experience as a nurse is this is one of the standard questions that we ask people. Do you have a healthcare proxy? And most people would say, oh, yes, I do. It's my spouse or my child. And I'd say, great, I need a copy of the paperwork. You can tell me who it is and they can confirm right in front of me and everybody can confirm, but I have to have the paper to put into your chart. So a copy of your healthcare proxy form is a good idea to keep in this binder. Your MOST form. So a MOST form, MOST stands for Medical Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And that is, I don't know that I have a copy near me, but usually it's a really bright pink. It's a little 2-page like fold over. And that asks people questions about CPR. So it's kind of like a DNR, but a little more detailed. And not everybody has a MOST form filled out, but if you do, it's a good idea to keep a copy in your preparation binder. For a MOST form to be considered a legal document, it has to be signed by your doctor or a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. So that if you're interested in a MOST form, you need to get it from whoever your primary care provider is, because they should be going over it with you to talk about what your choices are, and then they have to sign it in order for it to be considered a legal document. And then the 5 wishes document. It's a little booklet. I don't know if any of you have seen our 5 wishes booklet. It's, I would say, our most popular handout that we have for the community. And it is a nice little booklet that leads you through asking some of your advanced care planning questions. So it kind of prompts you to ask questions like, are there medical procedures you do want? What kind of medical procedures would you not want? Who have you listed as your healthcare proxy? So that's a really handy tool that people can use as well. We have them available to give out to community members through Hospicare, but you can also order one at 5wishes.org. It's available across the whole nation, and it's a really popular handout. And Bert, if you feel like you want some for CRC, let me know too, because that's a lot of people tend to like that little booklet. You can write in the booklet, you can draw on it, you can circle things, cross things out. It's very simple to use. I like it. I think it's a good tool.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, healthcare proxy we talked about. Oh, okay, so here's the MOST form that I mentioned, medical order for life-sustaining treatment. This is what the black and white copy looks like, the front page of it. In real life, most of the time they're bright pink. And the reason they're bright pink is simply because we want it to stand out and be easy to recognize in somebody's home. If you have ever filled out a MOST form or you had a MOST form for a loved one, a lot of times you are directed to put it on the refrigerator. And the reason you're directed to put it on the refrigerator is because EMS are trained to look on people's refrigerators for these important pieces of paperwork, because a refrigerator is a consistent place in most people's homes. So it's bright pink. Typically, you're told to put it on the refrigerator. That's why. Now, if you have a copy of it that's black and white, that's fine, as long as it's signed. It doesn't have to be bright pink for it to be considered a legal order, but it has to be signed by the doctor, nurse practitioner, or physician's assistant. Okay, so we're still talking about medical information that you would want to have in your preparation binder. Have you chosen to be an organ or tissue donor? If so, a lot of us have there's a little stamp on our driver's license that indicates that. So you could make a copy of that. Or sometimes you can get a card, an organ donation card, and you can make a copy of that or keep the actual card in your preparation binder. So what I can tell you, just for you to know, is that if somebody is in the hospital and they have been identified as a person who is an organ donor, and they are appropriate to be an organ donor, because there's very, very particular criteria that has to be met. Even if we know that this person said, yes, I want to be an organ donor, that person's healthcare proxy and or family still are the ones who get the final say. So if we have somebody who is has indicated they wanted to be an organ donor, and we go to the family and we say, we see that your loved one had wanted to be an organ donor. Would you like us to proceed with that? The family can say yes or no, even if you've documented that you said yes. So just for you to know. And if a family says no, we don't push it. That's the end of it right there. If the family says, no, I don't want to do that, then we say, okay. And that's the end of that conversation, just for you to know. Something else that's interesting is that some people choose to be an anatomical donation, AKA they donate their body to science. And we have a program in Syracuse at Upstate Medical Center that will accept anatomical donations. So if somebody has chosen that they would like to be an anatomical donation, they will get paperwork and a card that indicates they have chosen to be an anatomical donation. And we have to have that information. I have to see it, and it has to be uploaded into a person's medical chart in order for us to proceed after that person has died to be an anatomical donation. And I have worked with some people on hospice services that they had chosen that, and we were able to move forward with that after they died because they made it very clear to us, and they also had the appropriate paperwork so that they were able to be an anatomical donation, which is what they chose. But again, you don't have to choose that. And if a family says no, we leave it at that. Okay, I know that this is a lot. Again, you're going to get the little checklist to work through it at home. So if we miss something while I'm talking, it's okay. So that is those are what we've identified as the important information, the important medical information that somebody should have in their preparation binder. But if you have other things you think of that we don't have on our checklist, throw them in there. If there's something that you feel is important to put in there, it's better to have more than less. So this is what we've come up with, but feel free to make it work for you. So now we're going to move on to legal documents. And this can be very, very different for all of us depending on the life we've lived and our situation. But some of the legal documents that we suggest go into your preparation binder, of course, would be wills or trusts, birth certificates, adoption records if we're adopted or if we have adopted children, business ownership records for those of us who've had any kind of a business, even if we're not in business anymore, marriage and or divorce or separation records, copy of your driver's license, military service documents. Who here knows what a DD-214 is? Okay. And when I'm in real life with people, usually a couple people raise their hands and I say, thank you for your service, because the DD-214 is your basically your birth certificate for the military. It is your proof that you served in the military. It tells when you served, in what branch you served, in what the years that you served, and then how you were discharged. So military service documents can actually be extremely important because of veterans benefits. And I have my own story about that. So I'm the oldest daughter in the family, and we know sometimes what that means. So my dad years ago died unexpectedly. And as the oldest daughter, everybody expected that I would handle things. And I had found out that he had a veterans benefit to help with his burial and funeral. And I said, oh my gosh, that's a huge relief. Great. So I called the VA and they said, yep, we can do that. All you have to do is find his DD-214. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm really stressed out. I have no idea what an R2D2 form is. I have no idea where to look for it. And then I was lucky enough to find it. My dad had a filing cabinet that turns out was his own version of a preparation binder. And when I found that DD-214 form, and it said DD-214 in microscopic font at the top, the relief that washed over me, and I called the VA right back and said, I have it. And then we were able to move forward with his veterans benefits. So that was really, really helpful to and a relief to have found that form. And I think, wow, I wish I had known that I just needed to look there, and it would have saved me some stress. So that's my testimony about how important it is to not only have your preparation binder, but to let your loved ones know where it is too. So military service documents, if you have them. And then of course, passport or citizenship or immigration documents, if you have them as well. And underneath, I don't know if you can see, I have a little bar that's kind of covering up the bottom of my screen, but that's the social security cards or a copy of your social security card. Okay, and again, for the legal documents, this is what we have identified as important, but if there's anything else that you think applies to you, put it in your binder. Okay, burial plans and final preparations. So some of us have very strong feelings about what we want to happen after we die, as far as a funeral or memorial, or how we want our body to be handled or interred after we die. Some of us don't care at all, and anything in between. So if you have feelings one way or the other, it's helpful for you to write those down. And I can tell you, again, this is boots on the ground, behind the curtain information, that when somebody is on hospice services and they die, their loved ones actually call us at Hospicare, and we send a nurse out to pronounce death. So that we don't have to have police going out. We don't have to have lights and sirens. We don't have to have 911 go out. Our nurses actually go out and pronounce death. And I can tell you, I've done that. And after you pronounce death with a hospice person, you then ask the family, which funeral home do you want me to call? And this is happening right then and there on the day of the death of their loved one. So it's very helpful if the family had already known which funeral home they wanted to use, or that this person who was on hospice wanted to use. And this is one of the normal questions that we ask people when we are assessing them and signing them on to hospice services. Even though it sounds morbid to say, do you have a funeral home that you prefer to use? This is why we ask that question. Because if a person doesn't document, this is the funeral home that I prefer for us to use when I die, then right then and there, I would have to ask the family, which funeral home do you want to use? And they would just have to pick one out of thin air. And I mean, we have a list of the local funeral homes, but they would just go, I guess this one. Okay, which is fine to do, but it's very helpful if we know beforehand if there was a preferred funeral home. So that's why we talk about that. Also, again, if you have very particular wishes for what happens to your body, whether you are cremated or if you are embalmed, or, here in our area, we're fortunate we have a natural cemetery. So some people choose to be buried at Green Springs and have a natural burial. But your loved ones, it's helpful if they know what your wishes are. And then if you have any memorial or service wishes. So some people say, I don't do any kind of funeral, but go ahead and have a big picnic in the springtime for me. Okay, great. Write that down. Make sure your family knows that. And then I always make a joke and I say, this is also a time for you to write down if there's somebody that you don't want invited to your funeral, you can write that down. If there's any particular people that you don't want to come or you do want to come. And then, of course, obituary ideas. So some people write their own obituaries. That's really important to them. And that's a really beautiful time for them to have some life reflection. Other people don't want to write their own, or they don't want to think about it. That's fine too. But if you have particular obituary or a particular song or reading that you prefer people read at your memorial, then this is a perfect place to put that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what are the important documents that we think you should have in your binder, but here's something else that people tend to not think about. So let's pretend we snapped our fingers and we have everything put into this binder and it's all organized. It's a good idea to periodically revisit that binder and make sure that all that information is up to date. So we recommend that people pick a date once a year to just quickly revisit the binder and make sure that everything's up to date. And I typically tell people, why don't you pick April 16th, the day after tax day, because usually that's when all of us have paperwork out anyway. And so we can think, oh, it's time to revisit my preparation binder and make sure that all my information is up to date. You can also reassess what your wishes are. And if you say, yep, I still feel like I want to be an anatomical donation, or I still feel like I want to be buried at Green Springs, great. Or you can make changes. Or maybe you say, you know what, I forgave that one person. Now they are allowed to come to my funeral when I die. So you can change that information as well. Or if you've moved or had any other life changes. So pick an annual date just for a quick refresh of your binder. Okay, so some people choose after they've put their binder together, they kind of, or you might already be doing this. You might already have somebody in mind that you think, okay, I want this person to be the who's in charge of my binder, or I want this person to be the one who's making decisions on my behalf. So you can scribe or type a letter of intent. So this is not a legal document at all, but this is just a letter that's kind of explaining to whoever it is that opens this binder, what is this binder for and how are they supposed to use it? And this letter can look different for every single person. It could just say, "Dear Kimmy, here's all the information you'll need. Love, Dad." Okay, or whatever it is. Or you can have a letter that's much more detailed. Um, but it's basically just telling people what it is that they have come across here. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that we keep calling it a binder, and that's simply because that's what most people use. But it can be a binder, it can be a pretty binder, it can be a very plain binder. It can also be a box. Like I said, some people just throw all these documents into a those cardboard banker's box. Those work fine. It can also be a bag. Those are kind of nice if you have all the information in a bag because that's mobile. You can grab that bag and go places with it if you need to. Sometimes a filing cabinet can work. Again, not as mobile as a bag or a binder, but that's okay. A filing cabinet can work just fine. This is a picture of an actual binder. And the story behind this particular binder is that one of my colleagues, she doesn't work at Hospicare anymore, but she did work there for several years. And this is her mom's binder. And she said that her mom was starting to put this binder together, and her mom came to her and said, "Oh, I'm making this binder and I want you to know about it because you're the person who would be speaking on my behalf or arranging my finances after I die." And my colleague said, "Oh, Mom, that's morbid. I don't want to, Mom, no, stop. I don't want to talk about that." And it was only after gentle prodding of her mom bringing it up a few more times, and that my colleague witnessed how much pride her mom was taking in picking out this very cute binder that matched her home decor. Okay, you have the navy blue and the taupe there. That she kind of softened, and they were able to start having some of those conversations. So that's circling all the way back to the very beginning of this presentation, where I said sometimes this can be a tool to open up those conversations with your loved ones, because those aren't always comfortable or fun conversations to have, especially for the loved ones who are imagining you not being there, which can be very distressing. But you'll see, so this person was a retired educator, and you can see how nice and organized this binder was. It even has the little tabs that says, here's the information you would need while I'm still alive. Here's the information for after I've died. Here's my will. Here's the other documents. So that's the way that this person put theirs together. It can be different for every person, but this was just a cute example. And of course, we have the nice story of my colleague there. Now, sometimes you can also purchase ready-made organizers that you just fill in. So there's one, it might be kind of covered up. Here it is. This one I really like, this little blue book, and it says, "I'm dead, now what?" And I actually have had somebody come in person to this workshop, and they had it with them, and they held it up for us all to see, and they said they ordered it on Amazon. And that's a great tool because you just open it up and start filling in information, and it prompts you like, what's your insurance account number? What is your internet password? So that can be really handy for people to use as well. Sometimes people, these are some different ways to store. I mentioned before, so Wendy, you were pretty good at figuring out the internet here. So you might be more inclined to do an electronic copy, or some people might want to save things on a drive, like a zip drive or a jump drive. Some people might want to save their information on like some kind of a cloud storage. That's fine if you know how to do that. And then also make sure that whoever it is that needs to speak on your behalf has a way to access that information. Make sure they're not like me, and make sure they know how to actually use technology. Sometimes people use a fireproof box or a waterproof box. A safety deposit box. This can be handy while we are alive, but a safety deposit box, if we die, it is a huge undertaking for our loved ones to go through to gain access to that safety deposit box. They can do it, but it takes a while. And I know this because I had somebody come to this workshop and tell me that. They said they had that experience with their loved one, that they were able to gain access to the safety deposit box at the bank, but it took days or weeks for them to gain access. So if there's information in there that somebody might need immediately, that's not going to be the best place for that to be held. Or if you want that information there, make sure you have a copy somewhere else that's more easily accessible. A file cabinet, and then I love under the bed. It says sometimes people just throw everything under the bed, which is fine. That works for some people. Okay, so this is a little snapshot of that document that has now been shared. This is kind of what that checklist looks like. And again, you don't need to worry about having it tonight. This is just for you to print out or use at your leisure as you're working on your own preparation binder. And you don't have to use this. This is just the tool that we provide for people. But it's got all kinds of places for you to put down information and to put check boxes to indicate to yourself, okay, yep, I've put that in there, I've put that in there. Feel free to make copies of this for other people if you'd like as well. Okay, so again, for my type A personalities here that are already stressing out and starting to think about like, okay, I need to get this and this and this and talk to this person. Let's take a breath and let's talk about digestible steps that we can take as we're working on these preparation binders. So you want to start gathering documents. You don't have to have every single one of these in there right here, right now. But start gathering the documents. And what I tell people usually is if you already have an idea of where some easily accessible documents are, start with those, okay? Figure out how you want to organize your binder. Do you want it to be a binder? Do you want to throw it in a bag? Do you want to throw it under the bed? Those are all fine answers. Just figure out what you feel like is going to work for you. Talking to your loved ones. Now, this can be harder actually than it seems to bring up this conversation, and overcoming your own barriers. So sometimes it's difficult for us to think about some of these decisions or to imagine ourselves in this scenario or imagine our loved ones in this scenario. But the fact that you're even here taking this workshop is a great first step. And here's a picture of that 5 wishes book. It's the little blue booklet, says 5 wishes there. That's just what it actually looks like in real life. And it's got a place for you to just write your name right on the front there. And then as you open it up, it's got all kinds of places for you to just use an ink pen and fill it in. So that's a handy little tool to use as well. This is not a legal document, this 5 wishes booklet, but it is just a simple living will, a guided living will, essentially. Okay, so we're almost there. Hang in there. I know this is a lot to take in. Conversation starters. So for some of us, we can easily talk about these things with our loved ones, and that's great. But for a lot of us, it's more difficult and it's a more sensitive conversation. So these are some ways that we suggest people kind of bring up talking to your loved ones about this preparation binder that you're working on. So this top one says, there's been something I've been thinking about, and I wonder if now's a good time to bring it up. Okay. The next one says, oh, well, I want you to be able to count on me to be there for you. I want to do the right things for you when you need them most. Another way that you can open up the conversation is you actually ask somebody else what their wishes are first, because that's kind of you reaching out. So one of these says, I don't know what your wishes are, so please tell me so I can honor them. And then that can offer you an opportunity to say, oh, okay, and here's what my wishes are. You matter to me and I care about you. Okay, so these are all beautiful ways to open up the conversation. And I also tell people just use this in service as an excuse. Say, oh my gosh, I took this workshop and I wanted to talk to you about it or tell you about it. Or that little 5 wishes booklet can be a nice opener as well. And just remember that my colleague who worked for Hospicare, okay, she knew she worked for a hospice agency. And even though she worked for a hospice agency, she still was quite resistant to her mom talking about her own preparation binder until her mom prodded a few more times. Okay, so we suggest that everybody who wants to work on a preparation binder just do 3 things each week, just 3. So the things you could work on this week would be buy a binder or figure out how you want to organize this information and either get that banker's box or a bag or a binder. Okay, so that's step 1. Number 2, you could find your passport or your DD-214, your military paperwork, or your like one document. And then step number 3 is you could talk to a loved one. You could open up that conversation and say, oh, I'm working on this project. Okay, 3 things each week. I know there's some overachievers out there. They're going to do more than 3, and that's fine. But again, I don't want this to feel like a big chore for people. This should just cut. Hopefully, in an ideal world, this would organically just happen over time. Okay, so that is my blah presentation to speak at you about making a binder. And I haven't been paying attention to the chat to see if we had questions. Okay, we have the handout link there, but I would like to know what questions or comments or dreams or hopes or fears does everybody have regarding making a binder or some kind of a preparation document. And if everybody's feeling great, fantastic. Is there anything I always interested over time as I present this, people say, oh, wouldn't you want to have this document in there? And then we start adding those things into our PowerPoint presentation. So is there anything somebody thought of that maybe we don't have on our checklist that might be important? I think we did a pretty thorough job, but sometimes people have some interesting insight of things to add in there. And I always like to hear. You had to start. That's great. Yeah. So somebody in chat said I had started on this, but the info helped round it out. And that is the case for a lot of people. A lot of people have already kind of instinctively started something like this or kind of have an idea of where a lot of their important documents are, but then delving further into it can hopefully, our goal is make it a little more organized for people, or some of the boots on the ground experience, as I like to call it, that maybe you would never think of, but is handy to have the information in your preparation binder as well. So good, you've already got a good start on it. So just 3 things this week, only just 3 more things to add.
I had a good start on it when I was living in New York. I live in Texas now, but I'm a former Tompkins County resident.
Okay.
And now that I'm in Texas, I'll call it Texify it. A lot
Sure.
of the documents, the advanced directives are not in exactly the same format that Texas would easily recognize and accept without question. So, that's what I attended this workshop when I was still in New York. I think it was called the Death Binder then.
Probably.
So
Yeah.
this was a good refresher. I feel like given the change in my life that I've had, I'm about 75% there. And I just have been putting off getting it back in shape to be 100%. I mean, I guess you're never 100% ready. The other thing I wanted to mention, you brought up the safe deposit boxes. I think they actually seal them as soon as the banks do, as soon as they become aware of a person's death. I think there's somebody who's assigned to look at the obituaries and check it against safe deposit lists. So I know the advice that my father gave to my brother and me was, if I become sick, make going over and emptying out the safe deposit box a priority, you know,
Mhm.
before any, we can always put the stuff back in there if I recover, he said, but get it out of there before anything happens to me. Or as you said, keeping a copy of it. And I found that more and more banks now don't even offer safe deposit boxes as a service anymore. So you need to think of an alternative anyway.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they seal it until the whole estate has gone through probate. So when you said weeks or months, it could be even longer than that before you'd be able to get into it.
I believe that. Yeah. I didn't realize it had to go into probate first. And if that is the case, then, or go through probate, you're right. It could be years. Yeah. Sometimes that gets really drawn out. So that's an interesting, yeah, I was appreciative that somebody brought that up because I didn't realize that things like that happened where it got sealed. It makes sense if you think about it, but I just hadn't thought about it at the time. I think somebody wrote something in the chat. What did we see? Okay, great. So Nancy has shared, yep, some information that really applied to her tonight as well. And yes, Green Springs, which I mentioned, we're very fortunate in our area that we have Green Springs, which is a natural burial site. It's in Newfield, and if you've ever had a chance to go out there, it's beautiful. They've actually made it into a nature preserve. So for people who feel like they would like to be interred there, there are some really specific guidelines. You cannot be embalmed in any way. You cannot have any kind of chemicals put into your body and be interred at Green Springs. And so they have a really interesting burial way that they bury people at Green Springs, which is kind of neat to look into for people who are interested in that. Yes, Judith, looks like you have take yourself off mute. Let's see. Yeah.
I just bought my plot there.
At Green Springs?
Yeah, Green Springs.
Okay.
So it's good to reserve the very different locations. It's good to go and make your choice and have it in advance.
It can be.
And then the word is that the Lansing Funeral Home is a place that's thoroughly familiar with, in case somebody wants that name, familiar with the requirements, and you make your arrangement with them again in advance, so it's all taken care of. People have other things to think about when you die.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, actually, that reminds me, it's something I didn't mention during the PowerPoint presentation. So New York State, we have very, very particular rules and laws surrounding how a dead body is handled after somebody dies. And even though we have Green Springs, which is a natural burial cemetery, a funeral home still has to be involved. They still have to pick up the person's body and then hand it off to Green Springs. So even if you say, oh, I just want a natural burial, I don't want any funeral home involved, we still have to have a funeral home involved, at least for that transfer of the initial transfer of the body. So Judith is saying that Lansing Funeral Home, I mean, they all do, all of the main funeral homes do. But that is something to think about, that you still have to choose which funeral home you want to be doing that transfer of your body. Yeah. And then something else that's interesting and kind of frustrating, but I think it's good for people to know, is that even if you have chosen to be an anatomical donation, your estate or your family still has to pay a funeral home to transport your body to Upstate Medical Center. And if you're going to be an anatomical donation, it has to be in a refrigerated vehicle. It has to be a very specific vehicle to make that transfer. And that a lot of people are kind of surprised to find out that they have to cover that cost and arrange that. And I agree, it is surprising and it's frustrating that that's the case, but I think it's important for people to know that Upstate does not manage the transport. After Upstate has used a person's body for anatomical purposes, that they will cremate that person's body, and then the cremains are returned to the family members. And I think it's there's a time frame. It's within 1 to 2 years at most that those cremains are returned. Don't quote me, but this is what I think I remember. But I worked with a person who their cremains were returned after 6 weeks. It was a very quick return. So anywhere in that spectrum, the cremains will be returned, but the initial transport of the body the family or the estate pays for that.
And does Upstate charge a fee for any of that?
For the actual anatomical gift,
For the cremation?
for the cremation, no, that's part of the program, as far as I understand. Okay, I don't want to tell you something wrong, but as far as I understand, the cremation is considered, you give the anatomical gift, and then when they're finished using your anatomy, then you are cremated on their, that's part of their service back.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. What else? I know it's a lot to take in. Well, thank you very much for attending today. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your input and questions. And thank you so much, Wendy, for helping with getting that document put into the chat. So for anybody who wants that little checklist that I was talking about, there's a link in the chat. But if you missed that, don't worry, Bert can email it out to you. And it sounds like it's also on our website, which I believe you that it is. I just haven't clicked around in there. But available to print off of our hospicare.org website as well. And if you think of any questions after this, you can always reach out to Bert, and if he can't answer them, he has all my contact information, so he can reach out to me to see if I can get you an answer if you think of a new question. Judith, you have
Are you
something.
gonna make a tape of this available on the CRC website? Are you gonna do that?
Yes, it should be posted by the end of next week.
Thank you. Wonderful.
You're welcome. And thank you, Kimmy and Hospicare, excuse me, and thank you everyone for joining us. And
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, and Living Well with Cancer is the third Tuesday of every month except for December. And we love having you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, be in touch if you have any questions, but otherwise, happy preparing, happy organizing. Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. Take care. Have a good night.
Night.